Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you for tuning in. So I'm excited because about 2 weeks ago I received my very first advanced reader's copy, and that's the book that I'm going to be reviewing today, and that book is called The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. So let's get started. So The Other Black Girl is actually the author's very first book, and it's centered around a young girl named Nella. And Nella is working as an editorial assistant at a company named Wagner, and she's been working there for about 2 years. And, at that company, she deals with a lot, being the only Black person there, she deals with a lot of microaggressions, finding herself to be, dismissed, or sometimes, being ignored or having her voice suppressed. Like a lot of the crap that, unfortunately, you will deal with when you are the only Black person in a white dominated space, right? But her dream is to one day become an editor. And so she keeps pushing and keeps working hard in order to make her dreams come true. And then one day there's this other Black girl that gets hired, and that girl is named Hazel. And when that happens, Nella is super happy because, to put you more in context, Nella is not the type to see another Black girl as competition, right? So when Hazel gets hired, she's super excited because she's thinking, I won't be alone anymore. I'll have somebody to vent with. I'll have somebody to have my back. So she's super excited. And so Hazel and her, they have a conversation and they seem to get along right away. Hazel is super nice. She looks great. She has a great, she seems to be like a really cool girl. And then over time, after Hazel is hired, there's a few unfortunate and weird events that happen at the office. And slowly but surely, Hazel becomes the office darling. She becomes the superstar. And then Nella finds herself to be in Hazel's shadow. And, of course, that creates frustration on Nella's end. So Nella starts working really, really hard, even harder, in order to kind of keep up. She doesn't want to lose her spot. She wants to make her dreams come true. And in the meantime, again, Hazel is super nice to her. Then one day, Nella receives anonymous notes at her desk, and those notes are telling her, leave the company now. And then she gets another one that says, if you stay there and if you stay there, the longer you stay, the worse it's going to be. So she keeps getting these notes, right? And so Nella is like, what is going on? Who is sending me these notes and why? Is it Hazel? She starts wondering if it's Hazel, but then Hazel has been super nice to her, so it can't possibly be her. But then is it another coworker? So Nella goes into that into an investigation to figure out what is going on. And when she starts going into that investigation, she kind of finds herself jumping into falling into a rabbit hole, because whatever is going on is deeper than just her position at the company. It's bigger than her career. It's bigger than her. It's something a lot more darker and sinister that is going on, right? And so as we read along the book, we figure out what is happening and why those events have happened. So the book is told from Nella's perspective, but also from the perspective of 2 or 3 other characters who have a different background, but as you read along, it'll make sense as to why you hear their stories. So that's pretty much the premise of the book. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the story for you. I have to say that the book is kind of a hard book to fully put in the box. It's a hard book to categorize because I think it's classified as a horror, but it's not quite a horror, but it's not quite a thriller either. So it has an element of different genres, in my opinion, which I think makes the beauty of the book. I think that the book is so unique. It's not something that I have read before, and I really appreciated that. So for me, if you do want to read the book, I advise that you kind of go into it with an open mind. So I think that the author does a great job at illustrating a few things that are important and thought-provoking. The first thing that comes to mind is how, there's often... So for one, I think that she does a great job at showing you how cutthroat that work environment can be. And also how it can often feel like there's only room for only one Black person in certain settings. So it's never something that is ever explicitly said, or it's not something that, people will ever say out loud, but that's the energy that is around. And it can often be seen and felt that there's only room for one Black girl. So when there's a new Black girl, there's that idea of oh, this girl, she's going to take your spot. Watch out, And I know it's random, but it kind of reminds me of Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell, but I'm not even going to go on too much about it. But I remember Naomi Campbell, at some point, she was the Black model, right? And then when Tyra came along, the energy was like, oh, watch out, Naomi, Tara's going to take your spot. And that kind of created a conflict between the two of them, right? So I feel like the feud that they had was like mostly very fueled by the media for the most part. So I feel like that energy, you will see that in different work settings. And I think that in the publishing world, like in where Nella is working, I feel like the author did a really, really good job at sort of like showing you that, you know? Secondly, I think that the author also did a great job at sort of showing how, as Black women, no matter what position we find ourselves in, we often have to deal with a certain dilemma, you know. Do you speak up but risk being seen as difficult or being seen as the angry Black woman? Or do you shut up and keep the peace, but then compromise your integrity as a Black woman? So I think that, unfortunately, the answer to that is not always that easy. I find that sometimes as Black people, we can look at somebody and be like, oh, why would you not speak up about that? Or why would you say that? But then when we are in the shoes that the person is in, we realize that it's not that easy. You know, life is kind of a chess game too. And it's unfortunate that I find that as Black people, we have to think about certain things that other people don't have to think about. So the author, again, did great at kind of showing us that. So throughout the story, I could relate to Nella in a lot of ways, aside from the fact that we have similar names, but also the fact that I can remember one time, you know, kind of speaking up about something at work and saying like, you know what, I think that this is, it has like a racist connotation, and I have somebody kind of flip on me and be like, are you calling me a racist? And then the narrative is as if I did something bad when I didn't. And so you see that in the book as well. And so sometimes it's really nice to see somebody experience some of the things that you have experienced, because you don't feel as alone anymore, right? And other things that I love throughout the book is the idea of like sisterhood between Black girls, the friendships that we have, and how a lot of times, you know, we bond through our hair regimen, which I know might sound random to other people, but Black girls might know what I'm talking about. I really appreciate that the book sort of highlights a form of racism that we don't talk about very often. So I feel like when it comes to racism, you know, we're more comfortable about it if somebody does something that is explicit, you know, if somebody calls you the N-word or if somebody shoots you, like those are things that we'll be talking about. But the microaggressions that as Black women we experience at work all the time, I feel like it's not something that we talk about, and it's very damaging, and it can kind of make things a lot more, it does make things very difficult for us, because it'll be those subtle comments that are not as open. So if you call it out, then they'll be like, oh, but you don't have no proof. Are you sure this is what the person meant? So it's kind of tricky to navigate in the workplace sometimes for us. And I love to be reading a book again that kind of talks about that. And hopefully, you know, Black women reading the book can find comfort in that, you know, to have somebody tell their story. But I can also hope that, you know, non-Black people who read the book can kind of read it and think for themselves, like, have I been guilty of doing some of these things? If yes, hopefully they can now be more conscious about some of the things that they do and say at work. Or if they haven't been guilty of it, then it's like, hey, whatever, you know? So I'd like to hope that this book can kind of make people think, because there's that storyline, but there's a lot to be talked about with the subject matter of the book. So the book has themes, again, of sisterhood, the Black woman's experience, racism, the cutthroat work environment, I would even say capitalism, no lie, and competition, just a lot of things that can spark a great conversation. I feel like it's one of those books that you can finish and have a really fun and interesting conversation with somebody else about. So I think that the book is a little bit slow for my liking. Like the first 30 to 40% might be a little bit slow for my liking. But the plus side of that though is that we are fully set into Nella's office and work environment. Like by the time you read that part, like you really understand what the dynamic is at work, and you can almost like visualize like the office. So after that, you know, 30 to 40% that is pretty slow for me. After that, the book picks up really fast and it becomes like a page turner, and you know, you don't want to put it down, and because you really try to understand like what is going on, you know. Because the book has like a lot of twists and turns and a lot of things that you were not expecting. Like I was not expecting to, whatever is going on, it's not something that I was actually expecting, but it's really interesting. So yeah, all in all, I think that this is a great book that I do recommend. I think that it's a really great debut for the author, and I cannot wait to see what else she has in stores because she is a very skilled storyteller. By the way, like, even though I received an advance reader's copy, like, I haven't been paid or anything like that. So like, I really genuinely appreciated the book. So yeah, I do want to say thank you to Simon & Schuster for sending me an advanced copy of the book. And the book comes out on June 1st, so in a couple days from now. If you do pick it up, which I advise you to, if you do pick it up and you read it and you want to share your thoughts about it with me, by all means do. I always love talking about the books I read. So that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. And I will see you for my next video. Have a great week and take care.